Stetson University director of the honors program. And I'm here with Jasmine Parham, who graduated, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago from Stetson University? 2014. In the honors program as a biology major. And she's like, honestly, like, I love Jasmine, and I've always just been very fond of her and thought that she's just brilliant and imaginative and creative, and she has exactly the right attitude towards academics. But I'm going to start this off with a story about Jasmine that Jasmine maybe remembers, maybe doesn't, and maybe doesn't know the full details, but this is as accurate as my stories always are. Pretty accurate. So I remember your honors oral exam, and I remember you were late too. You're always late to everything. That's okay. But I talked with 2 of your professors in the biology department who are on that exam with us, and I think we were waiting for you to show up. And one of them told me that you were failing this professor's class, and in fact, you almost failed out of Stetson University. I don't even remember what your graduating GPA was, but it was awful. It's okay. And then you came in, and I think I asked you about Darwin, or maybe one of the biology professors did, and you proceeded to talk fascinatingly, digressively, in detail about Darwin and evolution and what evolution really meant and how people didn't understand it. Of course, we all understood it, but like how it's commonly understood and actually how it's misunderstood. And it was just firecrackers. It was just such a great honors oral examination because you demonstrated this sort of, I hate the word passion. You demonstrated like a profound appreciation and understanding of Darwin. And I just wonder, like, what do you say? Like, I'm right in remembering that you almost failed out of Stetson University. You were a terrible student in some respects, but you're also really smart. And so I wonder if you would just take 1 second and tell me what your education at Stetson University was like. And you can say it was terrible and I hated it or whatever. I don't really care. I don't think that's what you're going to say, but like you should feel free to speak your mind because like the 5 or 6 people who are going to watch this video want to know what you really think.
Oh, it's 5 or 6 people. No, that's a great question. I credit it for a lot of things. I will say, undergrad, I think the same kind of perennial issues with like depression, anxiety that a lot of people are plagued with. I feel like it's a symptom of modernity at this point. I don't know anybody who doesn't deal with that. And especially the more time I spend in academia, the more I see it.
Yeah, there are a lot of screwed up people in academia.
Yeah. But there are a lot of things that I liked about the biology department. I think there's like a lot of professors. It's not, a lot of the undergrads are very like swing towards pre-med, but a lot of professors were biologists, ecologists, researchers. I had a lot of great opportunities to go outside, and there was a lot of great places to go.
Our biology department is really weird. That up until recently, we didn't have anybody who did human biology.
Why do you need that?
You and I totally agree, especially at the undergraduate level. I love our biology department, and our biology department is instead basically a field research department. It's also scholarly in research, and they shake bunches of test tubes and do all sorts of like Bunsen burner experiments and stuff like that. And I'm not, but like I love the fact that our biology department, I go out to parks and I see them like right swimming, and like harvesting plants from the bottoms of lakes, or catching like rattlesnakes with their bare hands, or growing passiflora, or working with butterflies, and like that's our biology department. And you and I are on the same page. Like, what a great preparation for medical school, sure, but like, but like you loved biology for you like growing things.
Yeah, I like animals, I like plants, I like nature, and I think that's one of the best things that I got from my education there, and it's because just the makeup of the department. I remember
you also worked really closely with professors.
Oh yeah. I still remember. Was it when Dr. Work took all of us in conservation biology to the Southeastern Biologist Conference, and we stayed in her friends in South Carolina in her like floor in her room in sleeping bags. That was a great trip. I loved that trip, and I still have the pictures of us holding those salamander egg masses. That was a very, very, very good time. I remember Pixie the manatee from the from that same class. I remember, gosh, I have a lot of good memories of things that I did in those classes, and of course, ornithology with Dr. May. So many great things. So many great things. So many great things. And the time I embarrassed myself by confusing, what was it for a loggerhead shrike? It actually came up multiple times. I would confuse multiple things for loggerhead shrikes. It was a problem I had for a while.
Shrikes, by the way, are the coolest birds on the face of the planet, because Jasmine probably already knows this. I'm sure she knows this.
Yes.
But shrikes are famous in the ornithology world because what they love to do is to take their prey, their victims, and pin them, use like nails stuck from fences, and they like to like poke their prey onto nails and then come back a few days later when it's rotted just enough.
Well, they have to. So they're passerines. They're songbirds that like to pretend they're raptors, and they have a little hook bill, but they don't have the talons that like a proper raptor would have. So they have to get thorns and needles and nails to try to impale things. And I admire their creativity, and I desperately wanted to see one. And so any kind of in the range,
but we don't have shrikes in Florida, do we?
Oh yeah, lots of loggerhead shrikes. I eventually did see one, a real one. And I was like, oh, that looks nothing like the things I think it was a phoebe. I confused a phoebe for a shrike. It was embarrassing.
You were that shrike girl.
Yes. it was a running joke in my entire ornithology class.
If I remember correctly, and do give me some credit, this is 8 years ago, you founded the Anima Club at Stetson University.
I did. In
the honors program, and I remember having a conversation with you, and like, so I really admire your attitude towards your education at Stetson. Maybe things have changed now, but like, you were always here to like explore new things and discover things. You always had a really healthy attitude, and like grades are really important. We both know this, but like, they're not nearly as important as what you learn. And it's possible to get good grades and learn a lot, but it's also possible to learn a lot and maybe not have the most stellar undergraduate GPA, which is totally cool. I love that. I really admire that. And I wish, like, the hardest classes I teach are in the honors program, and I teach a lot of classes that are pass, fail, or not graded. And, you know, it's like you realize that basically professors weaponize grades at the undergraduate level, and they use them as a cudgel, and they have to. And I'm not actually like I get it. And then you do what you do. You're like the shrike, and like there's a thorn, and I gotta impale.
Yeah.
So but like,
I've TA'd classes at this point, so I know if there's not a grade, people will not do it.
Yeah. So there's only a loose correlation between GPA and education. There's a correlation. Don't get me wrong, but like there are many people who have an excellent GPA and they spend 4 years and they leave Stetson University completely unchanged and unmoved. They're exactly the same 18-year-olds as when they came in. And then there are people like you who come in and leave like totally different people. Aren't you from like Orlando?
Oh, I'm from, well, Palm Coast, Florida by way of Long Island. Like everybody in Palm Coast is either from Russia or Long Island.
Right, exactly. Palm Coast.
Which is a fun story, but complete digression. But yeah, I think that's one thing that I like about graduate classes is, you know, there's not much emphasis on grades, and they pretty much are, for the most part, discussion-based classes where we talk about a paper, we talk about a topic, we talk about a thing we're doing, we talk about a technique.
About graduate school is that all those people are passionate, like they're just like they're all us, and that's great, and you can't always count on that at an undergraduate level, which is
I mean, of course not. And that makes sense. People have to get degrees to get a good job.
Yeah.
And that's totally, it's a transactional relationship, and I can understand it. And like when I TA, I don't take it personally. It's just like people want to graduate to get the job. It's fine.
You develop thick skin as a teacher. So tell me about your trajectory. I wrote you letters of reference.
You did.
For your first graduate school. I remember this. And by the way, uh, William and Mary, didn't you apply
Mhm.
for? And I made some sort of, I wrote you a very good letter of reference. Like I don't write a lot of people letters of reference, because anyway. But I wrote yours, and it was very detailed. It was very. But then I made this sort of snide remark. I'm like, you guys are a rich institution. Give her lots of money. And you don't know this, but one of those professors wrote me back in this kind of like broadside, lecturing me about how William and Mary wasn't a wealthy institution and like that I was out of place and stuff like that. I hope I didn't screw you up too bad, but like
I
exactly.
wonder if you now feel
Like you
stand.
would. Did you go there? Where did you went
I
to?
did. So that's what I did for my master's. If I
Ah,
could like briefly
so I
outline
got
it.
you in.
Yeah,
You probably know the person who wrote me.
I suspect it might have been Dan. Well, it could have been Dan. It could have been John. But you know what? I'll let it go.
Water under the bridge. It's 4 years ago.
Water under the bridge. Yeah, I left. So I graduated Stetson 2014. I spent about 9 months floating around looking for a job. I did a lot of volunteering with like my local Autobahn. I put together this birding festival. Flagler Bird Festival still goes on to this day. I was the inaugural organizer. And then after that, I ended up using the experience I got from that job to transfer to some tech jobs at North Carolina Fish and Wildlife. I was based out of Raleigh. So I did like 50 field tech, 50%, a lot of administrative office work and public outreach stuff for the North Carolina Birding Trail. And then after that, I went to William and Mary, which their biology department is like a terminal master's program. So it's a funded master's program. If anybody in the future watches this, don't do any sort of graduate anything that is not funded. Just don't go into debt for
Amen.
it. It's not worth it.
Unless it's law school or med school or something like
Well,
that. Like, yeah,
yeah,
that's different. But
they do
you're
that with
totally
like the
right.
knowledge you'll make a bunch of money
Right.
after. But that calculus is changing for law school, or has changed. So, but I won't get into what lawyers are doing because I'm not. It's not my lane.
It's very complicated. Yeah.
Yes,
But I
but
agree with you 100%.
so if you want to do biology research that is especially in ecology, like cell and molecular stuff is a little bit different, but for ecology the track is usually people will graduate undergrad and then they'll do the seasonal field tech positions, usually to get hands-on practical experience in a field. And it's also helpful because as a 22-year-old, I was just getting my feet wet with research and not really knowing what I wanted to do. And then I did a master's program, which is also semi-common in ecology. There are some PhD programs that don't even accept people without master's degrees. And that was also helpful because my master's at William and Mary is how I got into like what I'm doing now. Now I'm I guess now I'm a second year or something, PhD student at Duke. And my master's at William and Mary got me into a whole new world of ecology that I was not before. When I like initially interviewed with my PhD advisor, she said, she likes to say that there are two types of ecologists. There are fluxers who study ecosystem fluxes and lizard squeezers, and that I was definitely a lizard squeezer, and I would be coming into a lab of fluxers, and was I okay with that? And, like the story of my master's program is how I kind of branched from being just a lizard squeezer to a fluxer. So my interest in biology and all that, like I think is very common with ecologists. Like I like nature, I like plants, I like animals, I like being outside. In William and Mary, I interviewed into work, like they have a very good ornithology lab there. They have an aviary, really uncommon for like a small liberal arts school to have all that stuff. And be funded for their master's program. And I went there because I wanted to do more of what I'd been doing in the field, which is like a lot of field-based research, stuff where I'm getting my hands dirty. I'm out in nature and with plants and animals. And my advisor for my master's told me, like, look, most of the people in my lab do stuff in the aviary with captive zebra finches, dosing them with mercury. Like a decade ago, the big finding in their lab was that a lot of birds in South River, headwater tributary of the Shenandoah River in Virginia, have a bunch of mercury because DuPont polluted that whole area with mercury for several years. I could give you a whole story of my master's research some other time, but like that's what everyone's doing now, was seeing what mercury was doing to captive birds, which is important and good physiological research, but it's not the kind of biologist I am. So I'm happy that I had a lot of good personal freedom to kind of craft a different sort of master's project. And what I ended up doing was field based, and I studied how the mercury from the river is making its way into terrestrial food webs. So we already knew that songbirds were eating spiders, like big wolf spiders and stuff, especially in the breeding season, that had these super doses of mercury in them because they bioaccumulate mercury. You can think of spiders as like apex predators of the invertebrate world. So the same reason that they say don't eat tuna, don't eat like swordfish, because they're large, long-lived predatory species that have a lot of mercury in them. Same thing happening in spiders. We were finding like spiders that had higher amounts of mercury than fish pulled from the bills of belted kingfishers in the river. And thus, yeah, it's amazing. And that's like birds like red-eyed vireos who don't eat out of the water at all. They're just in the canopy, had these crazy high levels of mercury on par with or higher than fish-eating birds. The highest birds we saw were Carolina wrens that did straight up have more mercury in them than kingfishers. It's unbelievable. And it's so my research.
So Carolina wrens don't eat fish.
No, they're very small. They're
exactly. But
anybody who doesn't know birds
do eat birds.
They're little bug eaters. Yeah, if you know birds, this is even more exciting to you. So long story short, the spiders they particularly liked were wolf spiders. And so if you don't know spiders, wolf spiders do not build webs. A lot of the research on transfer of aquatic contaminants to terrestrial food webs focuses on obligate riparian like orb weavers. They basically build their webs above streams, above rivers. They're filter feeders. Anything that flies in, any emergent aquatic insect, a mayfly, a mosquito, they get caught in the web, they eat it, something eats it. Very easy to understand direct transfer. What was weird in this case was these birds were eating wolf spiders. They can't build webs. They're super mobile. They're pretty long-lived. They're pretty big. But there was this open question of, are these wolf spiders eating aquatic insects or are they eating terrestrial insects? Because my advisor had this theory that from all those decades of the mercury being in the river, just normal flooding events, there are hundreds of tons of mercury also in the floodplain soil, just in the water. And you know, the orthodoxy of science says like once that mercury is out of this wet environment, it demethylates. The bioavailable form of mercury that people are afraid of is actually methyl mercury, and it becomes methylated, becomes like organic and bioavailable in this interaction with aquatic microbes in anoxic conditions. But you know, there's a lot of research that shows like in things like rice paddies or in puddles in places that flood regularly, you can have that same sort of thing happen. And then you have it entering terrestrial food webs like directly. So my master's research was seeing whether those spiders that the birds were eating were getting their mercury from terrestrial insects or emergent aquatic insects. And I was doing that with stable isotopes. And that would tail off to a fun little story that might not be interesting to anybody who doesn't care about isotope ecology. But long story short, if you couldn't tell, that's very different from like what I originally was doing, which is like I'm in there and I'm like grabbing a bird or I'm grabbing a snake or I'm grabbing frogs and I'm measuring it. And I'm like, my very first research thing was like my RU was Lyme disease ecology, and we were trapping possums and bugs and pulling ticks off of them. And now I'm doing like isotope stuff and mercury things. So this is, you know, a whole new kind of way of thinking of stuff. And when I was
which is it? Are they eating terrestrial or aquatic?
See, I knew you were going to ask that question. I was trying to avoid it. Don't know. It turns out that the carbon isotope signature that was basing it off of is not well differentiated enough in that system that I could see a difference.
So like the story of science is like 10,000 failures for every one success.
Exactly.
And that's, I mean, so science is so slow because it looks so simple, but then like, oh, but the isotopes are the same.
Yeah, and I can do it. Exactly. And so this is a normal part of science, and it's fine if you're not in a 2-year master's program. Yeah. For me, it was a bit of a disaster.
Yeah.
But it's okay because I survived. Look, I still got into a PhD program, and now I have all the time to have many failures. I'm told there will be many more. But yeah, that was kind of the branching point. I had this big question when I was applying to PhD programs. Would I like go back to my roots in doing, you know, I guess
squeezing lizards? Yeah,
being a lizard squeezer, or keep going on this fun new path I've discovered of thinking about, you know, nutrient cycling and environments and contaminants and things like that. And it's actually funny because my top 2 choices for PhD program, and I got accepted to everywhere I applied. And first, I only applied to like 3 places, but those applications are expensive and time consuming. But so my two choices though, I was going to Hawaii, or I would be looking at what is it? It's a zoonotic disease that is of very, very good interest. I've already forgotten the name of it. It's not Lyme. It's something bad.
I can't
But
help you there.
Okay. I would have been trapping mammals, like most of their mammal communities introduced, by the way. I would have been trapping mammals, seeing if they had the disease, like really back to my roots sort of thing in Hawaii. And then it was here at Duke. And the project was, you know, the professor, my advisor now, Emily Bernhardt, she is a biogeochemist, which at the time, I had not even heard of. She looked at a lot of mountaintop mining and looking at how contaminants and how that changes nutrient cycling and how that changes the communities in riverways. There's just a lot of aquaterrestrial biogeochemistry there. And she said that she has she's now a fifth year PhD student who started this project in Peru. In Madre de Dios, which is like the biodiversity hotspot of Peru, has like probably 20% of the world's bird species. Anyway, there's a lot of gold mining that's happening there. It's a problem throughout the tropics. It's overtaken like coal burning to become like the #1 source of mercury pollution globally in the world. And she was studying just like how this mercury was getting around. Turns out, this is like very interesting part of her study, that when they burn off, because they amalgamate mercury with the gold, they burn off the mercury, and that mercury is in the atmosphere, in the air, and it ends up going straight into intact complex forest communities. It blows past, you just imagine these moonscapes of deforested area where they cut down the rainforest for logging, for development, for whatever, for mining. It blows past it blows past the town, it blows past everything, and the forests suck in the mercury from the atmosphere like a sponge, because particulate mercury just sticks to the leaf surface area, and like there's stomata in the leaves, they open up and they just drink in that gaseous mercury, and it all washes through the rainforest whenever it rains, which is all the time. It's a rainforest. So it's just this crazy situation where you have this huge input of mercury, different from what the usual one is, when it's like, it's coming out of the water and it's working its way in that way. It's just raining in the sky, and the intact rainforests are soaking it in like a sponge. And all of this is happening in this major biodiversity hotspot of global conservation importance. And so she says to me, like, my student and this is Jackie, my lab mate, she's a chemist. Jackie is a mercury biogeochemist. She that's what she studies. But you, Jasmine, you're a bird person. You would bring something very different to the lab environment. And I can say all my lab mates here, they're all like hydrologists, geologists, chemists, that sort of thing. And I would be the lizard squeezer in the lab full of fluxers. But she said, and I agree, like this would be a very interesting thing to like ask this biogeochemical question that is really interesting because of the biodiversity here. And so the project that I'm working out now is seeing how the avian community in the rainforest and the insect community in the rainforest lends itself to how that mercury moves around. Because we already know the mercury is going into the rainforest, right? Where's it ending up? Who is bioaccumulating a lot of it? And how does that change based off of who the players are? Because you have this very interesting like canopy, emergent layer, understory structure in rainforest. You have animals who spend all of their time in one section, who go back and forth between different ones, animals who are specializing in fruit and different sorts of insects. You have like these leaf cutter insects who are bringing these leaves underground into these chambers, growing fungus on them, creating perfect anoxic conditions for mercury to methylate. And you have a whole suite of ant birds who follow these ants around on the rainforest floor to eat what they like. I don't say it's like redundant, like the rainforest is complex. There's so many birds, there's so many bugs. The food web, it's just dynamic and crazy. And so what does that mean for how mercury cycles through the system? So yeah, and that's how I ended up here, which is like
I'm guessing the answer to that is it doesn't help anyone.
I mean, well, I am a very new PhD student, so I could get there and find out everything is fine and nobody has mercury.
Have you been
Huh?
to Peru? Have you been
So
to Peru?
this summer I was going to go to this is my first field season.
Good
It
luck.
has been canceled because of coronavirus. Peru is
And
closed
Peru
until
is
October.
really being hit by coronavirus right
Oh
now.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's bad.
okay, that was really honestly terribly interesting, and it was great to talk with you and I learned a lot about ethyl mercury. Ethylene? Did I get it right?
Methyl with an
Methyl.
M.
Methyl mercury.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot about like science and biology and the importance of putting lizard squeezers with fluxers,
Yes.
and how you're shedding your lizard squeezing skin. I'm mixing metaphors. It's okay. And becoming a fluxer. All right, that was so great. I have to run, and I'm sure you have to run. We've been talking for a long time now. Um, I'm gonna, I'm gonna, I'm gonna, I'm gonna turn off the recording in a second. But that was great. It was so interesting to hear this. And the next time I'm in North Carolina, and I'm in North Carolina fairly often, I want to go out for supper with your mushroom guy.
Oh yeah. He'd love he'd
All
love that. Hopefully he's
right.
still around. He goes to Utah, out by Pando, that Pando, to do his field work, which is crazy. I told him next time instead of cookies to bring me a sliver of Pando. That's what I want from him.
I'm gonna turn off the recording, but I'm
So,
not gonna hang up. Yeah. Goodbye, everyone.
bye.